Every night, a blind boy pressed his hand against the window, and the stray dog outside would begin to howl. It started as a coincidence. The boy's name was Micah, 7 years old, small for his age, with hair that never quite stayed in place, and a voice that carried more music than words. He had been blind since birth. No light, no shapes, not even shadows. But he said he didn't mind. "The world sounds beautiful," he once told his mother, "and that's enough." They lived in a quiet town, the kind where the air smelled like bread in the morning, and the sound of sprinklers filled the afternoons. Nothing strange ever really happened, until the dog showed up. No one knew where it came from. No collar, no tags, fur like black soot and old snow, eyes too old for a stray. It never barked, never begged. It just walked the same path every evening, down Pine Street, past the old post office, across the yard behind the baker's house, and stopped under Micah's bedroom window. At first, Micah didn't even know he was there. But one night, as the breeze carried the scent of distant rain, Micah sat cross-legged on his bed and said, "There's something outside." His mother paused in the hallway. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Micah said, head tilted. "It feels like waiting." That night, for the first time, he reached out and placed his palm flat against the window. And outside, the dog howled. Not a full moon howl, not angry, not hungry, just long, lonely, soft. From that night on, it became a ritual. Micah didn't tell anyone at school. He didn't mention it during dinner. But every evening, just before bedtime, he would climb up onto the bed, face the window, and press his small hand against the cold glass. And somewhere outside, the dog would appear, always silent at first. Then the howl. Always one, always after the touch. His parents thought he was imagining it. "A neighbor's dog," his dad said. "Strays howl at night. That's just what they do." But his mother noticed something. Micah didn't fall asleep the way other kids did, with stories or lullabies or night lights. He fell asleep with a smile on his lips. She watched him one evening, quietly, from the hallway. His hand on the window. His breathing soft. The faint echo of a distant howl. Then, silence. Then, sleep. Neighbors started noticing the dog, too. "He's always out by your place," Mr. Cole from across the street mentioned one morning. "Big fella. Just sits there under the window like he's waiting for something." "I've tried feeding him," said Ms. Holloway. "He won't eat, won't even sniff the bowl. He just sits, like a statue." No one could explain it. Animal control came once, couldn't catch him. The moment they got close, the dog vanished, swift and soundless like fog. They gave up after 2 tries, said he wasn't hurting anyone. Just strange. Micah didn't care what they called him. To him, the dog wasn't strange. He was familiar. He couldn't see him, never touched him, but he felt him. In the silence, in the stillness of the night air, like a rhythm you don't hear, but know is there. He gave him a name. "Shadow," he whispered to the glass. "Because I think that's what you are." And the dog, as if understanding, howled in reply. One night, Micah's mother joined him. She sat on the bed, quietly, just watching her son's hand on the window. "Why do you think he comes?" she asked. Micah tilted his head. "Because I'm here," she smiled. "But why you?" He thought for a long time, then answered, "Because he's waiting too." "For what?" Micah didn't answer right away. Then he said, almost too quietly to hear, "For something to be whole again." That night, when the howl came, it was stronger, longer, and his mother wept quietly, sitting beside her son, unsure why, but somehow knowing The dog wasn't howling at the sky. He was howling for the boy. The howl didn't come one night. Micah was already sick by then. It started with fatigue, more than usual. Then came the cough, deep and hollow. Then the hospital visits, blood tests, terms whispered outside his door. One of them, his mother couldn't even pronounce. Another one, his father couldn't repeat. Micah didn't ask. He already knew. Somewhere deep inside the quiet, that only a blind child truly knows, he could feel it. The shift. The way his mother held his hand longer at night. The way his father sat on the edge of the bed, silent and unmoving. The way the room got colder, even when the heater was on. He stopped going to school, stopped sitting upright for long. But every evening, no matter how tired he felt, he asked the same question. Is it time? His mother knew what he meant. She helped him up, helped him to the window, guided his fingers until they found the familiar cold pane, and he pressed his hand to the glass. Outside, across the street, beside the tree with the crooked branch, Shadow waited. He always waited. The howl came slower now, sadder. Each night, it seemed like it took more from him, as if the dog was pouring everything he had into that single sound. One note. For one boy. Micah smiled every time, even when he couldn't sit up, even when he couldn't speak. He just smiled, and the dog would howl, then sit, then disappear into the night like he always did. But then came the night when Micah didn't ask. His mother sat by the window. The clock ticked past the usual time. She waited for him to lift his hand, to whisper, "Is it time?" Like always. But he didn't. He just lay there, eyes closed, breath shallow. She walked to the window, pressed her own hand against the glass. Nothing happened. No movement in the dark, no shadow, no sound. Just stillness. The next morning, the doctor gave them the news. Micah had slipped into unconsciousness sometime during the night. He wouldn't wake again. They didn't use the word coma, because it didn't matter. They only said comfortable and peaceful, and soon. The hospital let them bring him home. His room looked the same. His bed, his drawings, his little braille books stacked by the lamp. The glass he'd touched so many times. That night, his mother sat beside him and placed his hand on the window herself. Outside, she waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. She almost gave up. Then, a shape, still and dark, sitting beneath the window like always. And then the sound, the howl. Not just long, not just aching, but broken, as if something inside the dog had cracked in two. She fell to her knees, because she knew. That sound wasn't just sadness. It was goodbye. Micah died just before sunrise. His father was holding his hand. His mother was beside him, forehead resting on his chest. And outside the window, the dog never moved, even as the light returned, even as the birds began to sing, even as the world tried to go back to being normal. Shadow sat beneath the window, waiting. One paw lifted slightly, ears forward, eyes locked on nothing, on something only he could see. And then he lowered his head, closed his eyes, and stayed. That day, neighbors gathered. People brought food, flowers, silence. Someone tried to approach the dog. He didn't growl. He didn't move. He just sat, as if carved from grief, as if made of memory. That night, the parents left the window open. No hand pressed to the glass, no touch, but the dog still howled. One last time, low, final, then silence. The next morning, he was gone. No tracks, no fur, no sound, just empty grass, and paw prints, still fresh beneath the glass. The house felt wrong after he was gone. It wasn't just the silence. It was the emptiness of routine, The way mornings no longer started with laughter or the gentle tapping of fingers across the table. The way nights fell too quickly, too heavily, as if the world was still waiting for something. His room stayed untouched for weeks. His bed still made, sheets pulled tight, pillows arranged just the way he liked. His stuffed toys sat neatly in the corner. The books remained in their place, their pages never to be turned again. But the window, that window, drew his mother like a magnet. Every night she returned. At first, she stood only for a moment, hoping, then longer, then with her hand lightly resting against the glass, the way Micah used to do. She told herself she didn't expect anything, but she still listened. The town moved on faster than they did. People brought sympathy, then groceries, then silence. Grief, she learned, was something others acknowledged briefly, then quietly stepped around. But for her and her husband, time didn't move forward. It circled, day after day, window after window. And the dog, he didn't return. Not that week, not the next, not even a month later. But the paw prints remained, even after rain, even after wind. Even when everything else faded, those faint impressions beneath the window clung to the earth like memory itself. Then one night, she heard it. Not the howl, not a bark, just the click of claws on stone. She opened the curtains, heart racing. The street was empty, but the grass moved. She stepped outside barefoot, not bothering with shoes, not even telling her husband. She followed instinct, not reason. At the corner of the house, near the place where the lawn met the alley, she saw him, sitting, facing the window, as if no time had passed, as if he had never left. He didn't react when she stepped closer, didn't flinch when she whispered his name, the one Micah had given him, Shadow. His ears twitched, but his eyes stayed on the glass. She moved slowly, heart in her throat. "I don't know why you're here," she said softly. "I don't know what you want." No response, only breath. Slow, steady. "He's gone," she whispered. The dog blinked once, then looked at her. Not long, just enough, then back to the window. She stood there in the cold night air for a long time, watching this creature who had once howled to the sky like it was a sacred duty. And now, silent, still, a shadow waiting for something that would never come again. She dropped to her knees beside him, unable to hold the weight in her chest. "I don't know how to let go either," she said. "I don't know how." Her voice cracked, her hands trembled, and then, without prompting, the dog leaned his head gently against her shoulder. She didn't move, didn't speak, just closed her eyes and let it happen. For the first time since Micah died, she felt warmth that didn't come from sunlight or blankets or pity. It came from something wordless, ancient, real. He stayed like that for 10 minutes. Then, quietly, he stood. He didn't look at her again. He just walked into the dark, gone before she could call out. She didn't try, because something inside her knew. He wasn't leaving. Not truly. He was handing her something, the weight of what he'd carried all this time. And now, it was hers to keep. The next morning, she placed a handprint on the window in soft white paint. Micah's size. Her hand traced his shape from memory. She pressed it gently against the glass and walked away. That night, no howl came. But across the grass, under the pale moon, a shape stood watching. Not waiting, just remembering. Years passed. The house changed slowly, the way homes do. Furniture shifted, colors softened, rooms turned from shrines to spaces. The toys were boxed and stored. The books were donated to the school for the blind 2 towns over. But one thing never changed: the window. Micah's handprint remained year after year, untouched. No one dared wipe it away, even when the paint began to fade, even when dust curled around the edges of the frame. It became more than a mark. It was a presence, a quiet proof that someone had lived and touched the world, even if the world hadn't seen him clearly. Some evenings, his mother still sat by the window. Not every night. Not like before. But on quiet ones, when the wind was low and the moon was full, she'd find herself standing there again, hand resting on the wood, eyes drifting toward the street. There was never anything there. Not anymore. The dog hadn't returned. Not once. Not even a glimpse. People had asked about him. The neighbors. Journalists once. A filmmaker had emailed once too, asking to document the legend. She'd said no, because it wasn't a legend. It wasn't a story. It was grief, and love, and a shadow that had known something no human did. The boy is gone, she would think. But the waiting stayed. She wasn't sure if that was beautiful or unbearable. Then came the spring when the boy next door was born, and everything changed again. His name was Jonah. He had eyes like Micah's and a laugh that rattled leaves. He wasn't blind. He wasn't sick. But when he was old enough to toddle, he made his way to the side of the house, right to the window, the exact window. He placed his little palm on the glass and smiled. She'd seen it through the kitchen sink, a sponge in one hand, her breath catching. He stood there for a moment, giggling at nothing, then toddled away. The next day, he did it again, and again. Not every day, but often enough. One afternoon, as the sun stretched long across the yard, Jonah's mother laughed and said, "I don't know why, but he loves that window. It's like he's playing with someone." Her breath caught, and something in her chest loosened, just slightly. That night she stepped outside. It had been a while. The air was soft, the sky half-clouded. The earth smelled of something ancient and familiar. She didn't expect to see anything, but still. She looked, and across the street, under the crooked tree, something moved. She froze. It wasn't the shape that stopped her heart. It was the feeling, that same stillness, that same presence. She blinked. The shape was gone, but the feeling wasn't. She walked back inside, sat at the window, and smiled for the first time in years without the ache of it pulling her down. Not because she believed in ghosts, not because she thought he'd come back, but because something had shifted. She could feel it. The waiting had ended. Not in a scream, not in a howl, but in a child's laugh outside her window. The next morning, she added a second handprint beside Micah's. Smaller. New. Jonah's. 2 hands now on the glass. One fading, one fresh. And maybe, just maybe, if you stood there long enough on a quiet night, you might feel it. Not footsteps, not breathing, not even a shadow, but a presence, watching, not from grief, not from sorrow, but from love that had finally let go.